The first thing you need to know about my father's funeral is that I wasn't allowed to speak. My name is Trinity, and I've been the invisible daughter for 29 years. But that Tuesday in October, standing in the back row while my younger brother Alan delivered a eulogy about a man he barely knew, I finally understood what my father had been trying to tell me during those last hospital visits. Trinity always took care of the practical things, Alan was saying, his voice cracking at just the right moments. Dad knew he could count on her to handle the details while I focused on my career. The details. Right. Like sitting by Dad's bedside every night for 3 months, while Alan showed up twice with flowers and a guilt-ridden smile. Like learning to read his monitors, memorizing his medication schedule, and holding his hand through the worst of the chemo treatments. "She's so dependable," Mom whispered to her sister behind me. "Never caused us a moment's worry." Translation: never caused them a moment's attention. I watched Alan adjust his expensive tie, the one Dad would have hated, and felt that familiar knot in my stomach. The same one I'd carried since childhood, when Alan got the bigger bedroom because boys need more space, or when my college fund mysteriously became his graduate school money because Trinity's practical, she'll figure it out. After the service, people filtered past me with those awkward funeral nods. A few mentioned how strong I looked, how well I was holding up. What they meant was how invisible I remained, even in grief. But I kept thinking about that last conversation with Dad, 3 weeks before he died, when the morphine made him brutally honest. "Trinity," he'd whispered, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "There's something in the will. Something only you know about." I'd leaned closer, thinking he was delirious again. "Section 12, he continued. "The addendum. I made sure Dan wrote it exactly right. Your mother doesn't know. Alan doesn't know. Only you. Dad, you should rest. Listen to me." His eyes were clearer than they'd been in weeks. "I've watched them treat you like hired help your whole life. I was too weak to stop it. But I'm not leaving you empty-handed. The clause activates if your inheritance is redirected without your consent. Everything reverts to you. Everything." I thought he was rambling. The man was dying after all. But he made me promise to remember those words, made me swear I'd read every line of that will myself. Now, watching Alan accept condolences like he'd lost his best friend instead of a father he'd ignored for years, I wondered if Dad had seen this coming. The will reading was scheduled for the following Thursday. Mom insisted we all attend together, as a family. She wore her best black dress and that martyred expression she'd perfected over the years. Dan, our family lawyer, cleared his throat and began reading. Standard stuff at first. The house to Mom, some investments split between accounts. Then he got to the individual bequests. "To my daughter Trinity, who has shown unwavering dedication and sacrifice, I leave the sum of $980,000 along with my personal effects and—" "Actually," Mom interrupted, her voice sharp, "we've discussed this as a family, and we've decided Trinity's portion should go to Alan instead." The room went silent. Dan looked confused. "Excuse me?" I managed. "Alan has ambitions, sweetheart. He's building something. You're practical. You'll just get married someday and won't need it. This way, the money stays productive." Alan shifted uncomfortably but didn't object. Of course he didn't. "Mrs. Benson," Dan said carefully, "the will is quite specific about—" "Trinity understands," Mom continued, not even looking at me. "Don't you, honey? You've always been so reasonable about these things." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, crack, like ice under pressure, still holding but forever changed. "Of course," I heard myself say. "Whatever's best for the family." Mom smiled that satisfied smile I knew so well. Alan finally met my eyes, and for a second, I thought I saw guilt there. But then he nodded, accepting his windfall like it had always been his. "Wonderful," Mom said. "Alan, you can use this to really establish yourself. Maybe buy that condo you've been looking at." I sat there, watching my inheritance disappear with the same casual indifference they'd shown my entire life. But Dad's words echoed in my head. Section 12. The addendum. Everything reverts to you. That night, I pulled out my copy of the will and read every single word. And I smiled for the first time since the funeral. 3 weeks after the funeral, Alan pulled up to Mom's house in a brand new BMW. I was there helping Mom sort through Dad's clothes, because of course I was, when we heard the engine purring in the driveway. "Oh my goodness," Mom squealed, dropping Dad's old sweater and rushing to the window. "Alan, come see what your brother bought." Your brother. Like I wasn't standing right there. Alan stepped out of the car like he was posing for a magazine, all smiles and designer sunglasses. A woman emerged from the passenger side, tall, blonde, and wearing more makeup than a department store counter. "Mom, Trinity, meet Raquel," Alan announced as they walked in. "Raquel, this is my family." Raquel extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Alan's told me so much about you both. What a gorgeous home." Mom practically glowed. "Thank you, dear. Alan has such wonderful taste in everything." I shook Raquel's hand, noting how her eyes swept the room, cataloging everything valuable. "So the car," I said to Alan. "Celebrating something?" "Just treating myself. Dad would have wanted me to enjoy life, right?" He jingled the keys, fully loaded. "Navigation, leather seats, the works?" "How much?" I asked. "Trinity," Mom scolded. "That's rude." 85,000, Alan said proudly. "But I got financing, building credit, you know." I did the math. He'd blown nearly 10% of my inheritance on a car, in 3 weeks. "That's practical," I managed. "Actually," Raquel chimed in, "I've been helping Alan think bigger picture. He's got all this capital now. Why not make it work for him?" Mom nodded enthusiastically. "Raquel has a business degree from State." "What kind of investments?" I asked. Raquel's eyes lit up. "Cryptocurrency mainly. My cousin Marcus is a financial advisor, and he says we're looking at the ground floor of the next big boom. Alan could triple his money in 6 months. Or lose it all," I said quietly. "Trinity's always been the cautious one," Mom explained to Raquel. "She doesn't understand taking calculated risks." "Someone has to be practical," I replied. "That's exactly why this is perfect for Alan," Raquel continued. "He's got the vision to see opportunities. Plus, Marcus only charges a small management fee, 15%, which is totally standard." 15%. I bit my tongue. "We're also looking at real estate," Alan added. "Found this amazing condo downtown. 2 bedrooms, city views, granite countertops, the whole package." "How much?" I asked again. 450. "But it's an investment, Trin. Property values are only going up. $450,000. Half of what should have been mine." "Sounds expensive for someone who just started their new job," I said. Alan's face tightened. "I'm doing fine, thanks." "Of course you are, sweetheart," Mom jumped in. "Alan's always been so good with money. Remember how he saved up for that gaming system in high school?" I remembered. He'd saved up by taking money from my babysitting jar when he thought I wasn't looking. "Well," I said, standing up, "I should get going. Work tomorrow." "Oh, that's right," Raquel said. "Alan mentioned you're in customer service?" "Administrative assistant," I corrected. "At a law firm." "How nice," she said with that particular tone that meant the opposite. "Very stable." Mom walked me to the door while Alan and Raquel discussed paint colors for the condo. "Isn't she lovely?" Mom whispered. "And so supportive of Alan's ambitions. You could learn something from her attitude." "What attitude is that?" "Encouraging. Positive. You've always been so—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Critical. I prefer realistic. Same thing in your case." Mom patted my arm. "Don't worry, honey. You'll find your path eventually. Not everyone can be a visionary like Alan." I drove home to my tiny apartment, the one I'd been renting for 5 years because I couldn't afford a down payment. The same apartment I'd probably die in at this rate. But that night I pulled out the will again. I'd read it dozens of times, but now I focused on the addendum Dad had mentioned. Section 12, buried in legal language at the very end. Should the primary beneficiary's inheritance be redirected, transferred, or otherwise allocated without explicit written consent, all assets shall immediately revert to the secondary beneficiary, along with full administrative control of the estate. I was the secondary beneficiary. I grabbed my laptop and started researching estate law, reading case studies and legal precedents until my eyes burned. By morning, I had 17 browser tabs open and a notebook full of questions. The next day at work, I approached my boss, Dan, the same Dan who'd read Dad's will. I need to understand something about estate law, I said. Hypothetically. He looked up from his coffee. Hypothetically? If someone's inheritance gets redirected without their written consent, and there's a reversion clause. Dan set down his mug. Trinity, what exactly are you asking? I pulled out the addendum, pointing to Section 12. Dan read it twice, his eyebrows climbing higher each time. This is very specific language, he said finally. Your father was thorough. So it's legitimate? If it's properly notarized and witnessed. He flipped to the last page. Which it is. Trinity, do you understand what this means? I smiled. I'm starting to. 1 year later, I was having lunch with my best friend Tamara when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Alan's having some temporary setbacks with his investments. Family dinner Sunday. Be there. Tamara read over my shoulder. Temporary setbacks? Translation. He's broke. How broke are we talking? I showed her the screenshots I'd been collecting from Alan's social media. Rolex watches, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Vegas with Raquel. The condo he'd bought had marble everything and a monthly payment that made my rent look like pocket change. Jesus, Tamara whistled. He really went all in, didn't he? Gets better. Raquel's cousin Marcus? Turns out his financial advisory firm was just him trading crypto from his mom's basement. Lost 60% of Alan's portfolio in some meme coin crash. And the real estate? Condos underwater. He put down 20% and took out a loan for the rest, but the market shifted. Now he owes more than it's worth. Tamara shook her head. Your mom still think he's a financial genius? She thinks he's going through a learning phase. Last week she asked if I could lend him money for his car payment. Please tell me you said no. I said I'd think about it. Trinity. I know, but I'm playing the long game here. That Sunday, I walked into Mom's house to find Alan pacing the living room while Raquel sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone with obvious irritation. Trinity! Mom called from the kitchen. Perfect timing. We need to have a family discussion. I found her stress cooking, 3 different casseroles in various stages of preparation. What's going on? Alan's going through a rough patch. You know how volatile the market can be. But Raquel thinks he should double down on his investments instead of cutting losses. Double down with what money? Mom's hands stilled on the mixing bowl. Well, that's what we need to discuss. We gathered in the living room. Alan looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usual confidence replaced by jittery energy. So, here's the thing, he started. The crypto thing was just bad timing. Marcus says if we can ride it out another 6 months. Marcus lost your money, I interrupted. He didn't lose it. It's just temporarily devalued. Raquel looked up from her phone. The fundamentals are still strong. We just need to weather the dip. How much do you need to weather it? I asked. Alan and Mom exchanged glances. 50,000, Mom said quickly, just to cover expenses while the investments recover. $50,000. It's temporary, Alan insisted. I'll pay you back with interest once everything turns around. What about the condo payments? That's also temporary. The management company is being flexible. They're foreclosing, aren't they? Silence. Alan, Mom said gently, why don't you explain the situation to Trinity? He ran his hands through his hair. Look, I missed a few payments, but if I can catch up by next month. How many payments? 4. 4 months? It's not as bad as it sounds. You're 4 months behind on a $450,000 mortgage and you want me to lend you 50 grand? Raquel finally spoke up. Trinity, I know this looks bad, but Alan's got real potential. Sometimes you have to invest in family. Invest in family, I repeated. That's interesting advice. What's that supposed to mean? Alan snapped. Nothing. Just thinking about investments. Mom sat down beside me. Honey, I know you've always been careful with money. That's wonderful. But sometimes being too careful means missing opportunities to help the people you love. The people I love. Alan's your brother. Family takes care of family. I looked around the room, at Alan's desperate face, at Raquel's calculating expression, at Mom's practiced guilt trip posture. You know what's funny? I said. A year ago you decided I didn't need my inheritance because I was practical and would just get married someday. But now you want my practical savings to bail out Alan's impractical choices. That's different, Mom said. How? Alan was investing in his future. This is just a temporary setback. And what was I investing in? Groceries? Alan stood up abruptly. Fine. If you don't want to help, just say so. Don't make this about ancient history. Ancient history? It was 1 year ago. You got over it, Mom said. You said you understood. I said whatever was best for the family. Exactly. And right now, what's best for the family is helping Alan get back on his feet. I stood up too. I need to think about it. Think about what? Raquel demanded. Your brother needs help. My brother needed help learning to manage money. Instead, he got handed almost $1 million and a girlfriend who encouraged him to gamble it away. That's not fair, Alan said. You're right. Fair would have been getting my inheritance in the first place. I headed for the door, but Mom's voice stopped me. Trinity, wait, you're being dramatic. I turned back. Am I? Or am I finally being honest? About what? About the fact that I've been useful when you needed me, but I'm not going anywhere. Mom's face went white. What did you say? Nothing. Just something I overheard at brunch last month. I walked out, leaving them staring after me. In my car, I called Tamara. How'd it go? Perfect. They're desperate. And? It's time. 2 years after Dad's funeral, Mom called me crying. Trinity, honey, we need to talk. Can you come over, please? Her voice had that trembling quality she used when she wanted something big. I'd heard it before, when she needed me to co-sign Alan's first apartment lease, when she wanted me to lie to Dad about her credit card debt, when she needed someone to blame for family problems. I'll be there in an hour, I said. And Trinity? Could you bring Tamara? I think we need a neutral party for this conversation. Interesting. Mom had never wanted Tamara around for family discussions before. She usually made comments about how Tamara was too opinionated or didn't understand family dynamics. I picked up Tamara, who was carrying a leather briefcase. You ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for 2 years. When we arrived, Mom's house looked different, smaller somehow. The lawn needed mowing, and there was a notice taped to the front door that Mom had clearly tried to hide behind a wreath. Mom answered before we could knock, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Thank you for coming, both of you. Alan was slumped on the couch, looking like he'd aged 5 years. No designer clothes today, just a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans with a hole in the knee. Raquel was nowhere to be seen. Where's your girlfriend? I asked. Gone, Alan muttered. Moved back to her parents' place last month. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. You're right, I'm not. Mom shot me a warning look. Can we please just focus on the situation? What situation is that exactly? She wrung her hands. Alan lost the condo. The bank foreclosed last week, and there are some other debts. How much? $40,000 in credit cards, $15,000 to Marcus. Apparently, there were fees we didn't know about. And she glanced at Alan. Tell her about the car. Repossessed, Alan said without looking up. 3 months behind on payments. I sat down across from them. Tamara remained standing, briefcase in hand. So you're broke, I said. We're family, Mom said quickly. We help each other in times like this. Times like what? Times when someone gambles away $1 million? It wasn't gambling. What would you call it? Alan finally looked up. Look, I screwed up. Is that what you want to hear? I made bad choices, but I'm trying to fix things. How? I got a job. Retail, but it's something. And I'm looking into bankruptcy. Bankruptcy? Mom gasped. Alan, no! That would ruin your credit forever. My credit's already ruined, Mom. There has to be another way. She turned to me with those pleading eyes. Trinity, you've always been so good with money. Maybe you could help us figure out a payment plan or co-sign a consolidation loan. A consolidation loan for $40,000? Plus the other debts, Alan added quietly. How much total? $78,000, Mom whispered. I let that number hang in the air for a moment. And you want me to co-sign for this because you're family, Mom said. Because we love you. Because you've always been there when we needed you. Always been there, I repeated. That's interesting phrasing. What do you mean? I looked at Tamara, who nodded and opened her briefcase. Mom, do you remember what you said at Dad's will reading? Trinity, this isn't the time. You said I was practical, that I'd just get married someday and wouldn't need the money. That Alan had ambitions. I was trying to do what was best. For who? For the family. Which family? Because I'm starting to think I was never really part of it. Alan sat up straighter. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time either of you called me just to talk? When's the last time you asked about my life, my job, my dreams? Silence. The only time I hear from you is when you need something. Money, favors, someone to clean up your messes. Trinity, Mom said, her voice shaking, you're being cruel. Am I? Or am I finally being honest? Tamara stepped forward. Mrs. Benson, Trinity asked me here as her legal representative. Mom's face went pale. Legal representative? There's something you need to see. Tamara pulled out a document. Section 12 of your husband's will, the addendum. What addendum? I stood up and walked to the mantel, where Dad's picture still sat. The one he told me about before he died. The one that says, if my inheritance gets redirected without my written consent, everything reverts back to me. That's impossible, Mom breathed. Is it? I turned back to face them. Did you ever ask for my written consent to give my money to Alan? You said you understood. I said whatever was best for the family. I never signed anything. Tamara placed the document on the coffee table. This clause gives Trinity full control over all inherited assets. The house, the remaining investments, everything. Mom sank into her chair. You can't be serious. Dead serious. I sat back down, feeling calmer than I had in years. Alan spent my inheritance. Now he's broke and in debt. You enabled every bad decision he made. And now you want me to bail you both out. Trinity, please, Alan said. I know I messed up, but what? You're sorry? You'll do better next time? I shook my head. There won't be a next time. What are you saying? I looked at both of them, really looked at them, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger anymore, something colder. I'm saying Section 12 of Dad's will is now in effect. As of today, I have full financial control of this estate. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Including the house? Including the house. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Alan spoke. So what happens now? I smiled for the first time in months. Now we see how practical I really am. The next morning, I walked into Dan's office with Tamara and a folder full of documents. "Trinity," Dan said, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother called me last night. She was upset." I imagine she was. "She's claiming you're trying to steal the family home." Am I? I sat down and slid the folder across his desk. Or am I exercising my legal rights under Section 12 of my father's will? Dan opened the folder and started reading. His face grew more serious with each page. "These are bank statements," he said. "Alan's bank statements. Notice the dates and amounts. $980,000, transferred in 3 installments over 6 months. All of it gone within 18 months. And these? Credit reports, foreclosure notices, debt collection letters." I leaned forward. "Dan, my brother didn't just spend my inheritance. He borrowed against it, used it as collateral, and lost everything." Tamara pulled out another document. "This is the original transfer authorization. Notice anything missing?" Dan studied it carefully. "Trinity's signature." "Exactly. My mother authorized the transfer without my written consent. According to Section 12, that makes it invalid." "Trinity," Dan said slowly, "if we invoke this clause, it doesn't just give you back the money Alan spent, it gives you control of the entire estate." "I know. Including the house your mother lives in." "I know." Dan set down the papers. "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you asking as my lawyer or as a family friend?" "Both." "As my lawyer, what's your professional opinion?" He sighed. "The clause is ironclad. Your father was very specific about the language. If you want to invoke it, you have every legal right." "And as a family friend?" "This will destroy your relationship with your mother and brother." "What relationship?" I asked. "The one where I'm useful when they need something and invisible the rest of the time?" Dan was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want me to do?" "Freeze all estate accounts, transfer the house deed to my name, and prepare eviction notices." "Eviction notices?" 60 days. That's fair, right?" Dan stared at me. "Trinity, that's your family." "No," I said, standing up. "Family doesn't steal from each other." 2 hours later, my phone started ringing. First Mom, then Alan, then Mom again. I let them go to voicemail. By evening, I had 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages ranging from pleading to threatening. Alan's final text read, "Answer your damn phone. We need to talk." I called him back. "Trinity, thank God. Mom's having a panic attack. She can't breathe." "Is she at the hospital?" "No, she's here, but then she can breathe fine. What do you want, Alan?" "I want to know what the hell you think you're doing." "I'm taking back what was stolen from me." "It wasn't stolen. Mom was trying to help me build a future. With my money. It was Dad's money. That he left to me. You said you understood?" I said whatever was best for the family. Turns out, what's best for the family is me having control of the finances. "Trinity, please. We can work this out. I'll get another job, pay you back." "With what? You're 78,000 in debt and working retail." "I'll figure it out." "Like you figured out cryptocurrency? Like you figured out real estate?" The line went quiet. "We're family," he said finally. "Are we? Because family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't steal from each other." "I never stole." "You took $980,000 that wasn't yours. What would you call that?" "It was a loan." "From who?" "I never agreed to loan you anything." "From the family. From Dad's estate." "Dad's estate that specifically left that money to me." Another long silence. "So what now?" Alan asked. "You're going to kick us out of the house?" "You have 60 days to find somewhere else to live." "Trinity, Mom's lived in that house for 30 years. And she can live somewhere else now." "Where? She doesn't have any money." "She should have thought of that before she gave away mine." "You're being cruel." "I'm being practical. Isn't that what you always said I was? I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I drove to the house. Mom's car was in the driveway, along with two others I didn't recognize. I walked in without knocking. It was my house now, after all. Mom was in the living room with her sister Janet and her neighbor Mrs. Patterson. All three women turned to stare at me like I'd crawled out from under a rock. "Trinity," Janet said coldly, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About this ridiculous legal stunt you're pulling." "It's not a stunt. It's a state law." "It's vindictive," Mrs. Patterson added. "Your poor mother is beside herself." I looked at Mom, who was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Are you beside yourself?" "How can you ask me that?" she whispered. "How can you do this to your own family?" "The same way you could give away my inheritance without asking." "That was different." "How?" "I was trying to help Alan succeed. And I'm trying to help myself succeed. What's the difference?" Janet stood up. "The difference is that you're being selfish." I laughed. Actually laughed. "I'm being selfish?" "I spent 3 months caring for Dad while Alan visited twice. I've been the responsible one my entire life while Alan got everything handed to him. And when Dad left me something, finally, you gave it away without even asking. But I'm the selfish one?" "You don't understand," Mom started. "I understand perfectly. I understand that I was never really part of this family. I was just the help." I walked to the mantel and picked up Dad's picture. But Dad understood. That's why he put that clause in his will. He knew exactly what you'd do. I headed for the door, then turned back. 60 days, I said. After that, this conversation happens with the sheriff. 3 weeks into the 60-day notice, I was having coffee with Tamara when she brought up something I'd been avoiding. "Have you thought about what happens after they're gone?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you'll have everything you wanted. The house, the money, the control. But you'll also be completely alone." "I'm already alone." "No, you're not. You're angry. There's a difference." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Trinity, this is Raquel. We need to talk. Meet me at Starbucks on 5th Street. 1 hour." I showed Tamara the message. "You're not going," she said immediately. "Why not? This should be interesting." "Because it's obviously a setup." "For what?" "I don't know, but nothing good comes from meeting with your brother's ex-girlfriend in a public place." An hour later, I was sitting across from Raquel at Starbucks. She looked different without the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Tired. Desperate. "Thanks for coming," she said. "What do you want, Raquel?" "I want to apologize." "For what?" "For encouraging Alan to make those investments, for pushing him toward Marcus, for everything." I sipped my coffee and waited. "I know you probably think I was just using him for his money." "Weren't you?" She flinched. "At first, maybe. But I did care about him. I thought we were building something together." "You were. A pile of debt." "I know you hate me. I don't hate you. I don't think about you at all. Alan's a mess, Trinity. He's not eating, barely sleeping. He keeps talking about how he failed everyone. He did fail everyone. He's your brother. My brother stole from me. He didn't steal. He took money that wasn't his. What would you call it?" Raquel leaned forward. "Look, I know I'm probably the last person who should be asking this, but could you maybe give him another chance? Let him pay you back over time?" "With what money?" "He's got that retail job, making $12 an hour. Do you know how long it would take him to pay back $980,000 at $12 an hour?" She was quiet. 68 years, I continued. Assuming he spent nothing on food, rent, or any other living expenses. There has to be another way. There is. He could have not spent my inheritance in the first place. Raquel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "What is it?" "Alan. He's at your mom's house. He's drunk and talking about doing something stupid." "What kind of stupid?" The kind where he doesn't wake up tomorrow. I was out of my chair before she finished the sentence. 20 minutes later, I pulled into Mom's driveway behind 2 police cars and an ambulance. My heart stopped. I ran to the front door where a paramedic was talking to Mom. "Is he—" "He's alive," Mom said, her face streaked with tears. "But Trinity, he's not okay." I found Alan in the living room, sitting on the couch with a police officer. He looked up when I walked in, and I barely recognized him. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt. "Trinity," he said, his voice slurred. "You came." "Of course I came, you idiot." The officer looked between us. "Are you family?" "I'm his sister. He's been drinking heavily and made some concerning statements to neighbors. We're recommending a psychiatric evaluation." "No," Alan said quickly. "No hospitals." "No, I'm fine." "You're not fine," I said, sitting down next to him. "When's the last time you ate?" He shrugged. "When's the last time you slept?" Another shrug. "Alan, look at me." He met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to follow me around when we were kids. Before the favoritism, before the entitlement, before everything went wrong. "What were you planning to do?" I asked quietly. "I don't know. Something permanent." "Because of the money?" "Because I ruined everything. Because I'm a failure. Because you hate me." "I don't hate you." "Yes, you do, and you should. I took your money and threw it away. I destroyed our family. I destroyed everything Dad worked for." The officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we really think you should come with us." "Just for observation." "No," Alan said again. "I'm not going anywhere." I looked at the officer. "Can you give us a few minutes?" He hesitated, then nodded. "We'll be outside." After they left, I turned to Alan. "You want to know what Dad told me before he died?" Alan looked up. "He said he was proud of you. Even after all the mistakes, all the wasted opportunities, he was still proud of you." "That's not true." "It is true. He said you had potential. You just needed to learn how to use it." I had potential. Past tense. You're 26 years old, Alan. Your life isn't over. Feels like it is. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about Dad's words, about the clause in the will, about everything that had brought us to this moment. "The eviction notice," I said finally. "I'm withdrawing it." Alan's head snapped up. "What?" "You and Mom can stay in the house." "Trinity?" "But there are conditions." He waited. "You get help, real help, therapy, financial counseling, whatever it takes. And you get a better job, and you start paying me back even if it's just $50 a month." "Why?" "Because you're my brother, and because Dad would want me to give you another chance." Alan started crying then. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but real, broken sobs. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Trinity." I put my arm around him, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe tomorrow was right. Maybe there was a difference between being angry and being alone. But as I held my broken brother, I wondered if forgiveness was just another word for weakness, and whether Dad would be proud of what I was becoming. 2 days after Alan's breakdown, Mom called with that familiar manipulative sweetness in her voice. "Trinity, honey, I'm having a little dinner party this weekend. Just some close family friends. I'd love for you to come." "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just thought it would be nice to have everyone together. You know, after everything that's happened." I knew exactly what this was. Mom's last-ditch effort to turn public opinion against me. Get the family friends together, paint herself as the victim, make me look like the ungrateful daughter who was tearing the family apart. "What time?" I asked. 7 o'clock Saturday. "Oh, and Trinity? Maybe don't mention the legal situation. I'd prefer to keep family business private." "Of course you would." Saturday evening, I pulled up to the house, my house, and saw cars lining the street. Mom had invited everyone, the Pattersons from next door, her book club friends, Uncle Robert and Aunt Janet, even some of Dad's old work colleagues. I walked in wearing my best dress and a smile that could cut glass. "Trinity!" Mom rushed over, all fake warmth and air kisses. "Everyone's so excited to see you." The living room was packed with people holding wine glasses and making small talk. Conversation stopped when I entered, replaced by awkward smiles and careful hellos. Alan was in the corner, looking uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. "Trinity, dear." Mrs. Patterson approached with her usual condescending tone. "How are you holding up? Your mother tells us you've been under a lot of stress lately." "Have I? Well, with the family situation and all, it must be so difficult losing your father and then having all these disagreements." "What disagreements?" Mrs. Patterson glanced at Mom, who was watching from across the room. "Oh, family finances can be so complicated after a death." "Can they?" Uncle Robert joined us, drink in hand. "Trinity, your mother's been telling us about some legal confusion with your father's will. Sounds like a real mess." "Is it a mess, Mom?" I called across the room. The entire party went quiet. Mom's face flushed. "Trinity, perhaps we could discuss this later." "No, I think now is perfect. You invited all these people to hear about our family business, right?" "I didn't." "Then let's give them the whole story." I moved to the center of the room. "How many of you know what really happened with Dad's will?" Uncomfortable shuffling, nervous glances. "Mom, why don't you tell them? Tell them how Dad left me $980,000 and how you decided to give it to Alan instead." "Trinity, please. Tell them how you never asked my permission, never got my signature, just decided that I didn't need it because I was practical and would just get married someday." Aunt Janet stepped forward. "Trinity, that's enough." "Is it?" "Because I'm just getting started." I turned to face the room. "Tell them how Alan spent every penny in 18 months. The BMW, the condo, the cryptocurrency, the luxury watches." "That's not fair," Alan said quietly from the corner. "Isn't it? Tell them about the foreclosure, Alan. Tell them about the $78,000 in debt." "Trinity, stop," Mom pleaded. "Tell them how you both came to me begging for money to fix the mess you created. Tell them how you wanted me to co-sign loans and bail you out even though you'd stolen from me in the first place." The room was dead silent now. "And then tell them," I continued, my voice getting stronger, "how you called me selfish when I said no." Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. Just 30 years of being treated like hired help in my own family." I walked over to Mom, who was gripping her wine glass like a lifeline. "You want to know what's really sad? I would have helped Alan if you'd just asked. If you'd treated me like family instead of like a piggy bank you could break whenever you needed money." "Trinity," Mom whispered, "you're embarrassing yourself." Am I? Or am I finally telling the truth? I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. "What's that?" Uncle Robert asked. "A bill." I handed it to Mom. "For 30 years of unpaid emotional labor. For all the times I cleaned up your messes, covered your lies, and pretended everything was fine when it wasn't." Mom opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line. "The cost of being taken for granted, priceless, but I'll settle for an apology." "You want an apology?" Mom asked, her voice breaking. "I want acknowledgement. I want you to admit that you treated me like I didn't matter, that you gave away my inheritance without a second thought, because you never saw me as anything more than the reliable daughter who would always be there to clean up after everyone else." The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. "I want you to admit," I continued, "that you only call me when you need something. That you've never once asked about my dreams, my goals, my life, that I've been invisible in this family for 30 years. Mom was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I want you to admit that when Dad was dying, I was the one who held his hand every night while Alan was out living his best life with my money." "Trinity," Alan started. And I want you to admit that even now, even after everything, you brought all these people here hoping they'd pressure me into backing down. Because you still don't see me as a person with rights and feelings. You see me as an obstacle to overcome. I looked around the room at all the uncomfortable faces. Well, here's your acknowledgement. I'm not backing down. I'm not disappearing. And I'm not cleaning up anyone else's mess ever again. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Mom? The eviction notice is back in effect. You have 37 days. I left them all sitting in stunned silence. In my car, I sat for a moment, hands shaking with adrenaline. My phone buzzed with a text from Tamara. How did it go? I typed back, I think I just burned down every bridge I had left. Good, she replied. Some bridges deserve to burn. The moving truck pulled away from the house on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my car as Mom and Alan loaded the last of their belongings into her sedan. Mom looked older somehow, smaller. She kept glancing back at the house like she was memorizing it. Alan carried boxes with the mechanical movements of someone who'd given up fighting. Neither of them saw me parked across the street. My phone rang. Tamara. You sure about this? She asked. About what? About watching them leave. You could still change your mind. Could I? Trinity, you have all the power here. You could let them stay, work out a payment plan. Like they worked out asking my permission before stealing my inheritance? That's not what I meant. I watched Mom struggle with a heavy box. Alan took it from her without a word. They found an apartment, I said. 2 bedrooms in Riverside. Alan's got a second job at a warehouse. Mom's working part-time at a dental office. How do you know all that? I have my sources. You've been checking up on them. I've been protecting my investment. But that wasn't entirely true. I'd been checking because some part of me needed to know they were okay. The same part that had almost withdrawn the eviction notice again last week. Alan walked back to the house one more time. He stood on the porch for a long moment, then pulled out his keys and dropped them in the mailbox. My keys now. Mom got in the driver's seat and started the engine. As they pulled away, she looked directly at my car. Our eyes met through the windshield. She didn't wave. Neither did I. I sat there for another hour, staring at the empty house. My house. The house I'd grown up in, where I'd learned to be invisible, where I'd cleaned up everyone else's messes while they lived their lives. Finally, I got out and walked to the front door. The key felt strange in my hand, heavier than it should have been. Inside, the house echoed with emptiness. They'd taken most of the furniture, but the bones of my childhood remained. The kitchen where I'd made countless meals while Mom criticized my technique. The living room where I'd sat quietly while Alan got praised for mediocre report cards. The hallway where family photos had hung, photos that somehow never quite captured me in focus. I walked upstairs to my old bedroom. It was the smallest room in the house, of course. Alan's room had been twice the size because boys need more space. My room was empty now except for a single envelope on the windowsill. My name was written on it in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Trinity, I know you'll probably throw this away without reading it, but I need to say this somewhere. You were right about everything. I did treat you like you didn't matter. I did take you for granted. I did give away your inheritance because I thought you'd just accept it like you accepted everything else. I was wrong. I was wrong about all of it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what I lost. Mom. I read it twice, then folded it and put it in my pocket. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Trinity, it's Alan. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know I started therapy. And I got accepted into a debt management program. It'll take me 15 years to pay off what I owe, but I'm going to do it. I'm also starting community college in the fall. Business administration. I want to learn how to handle money properly. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I thought you should know I'm trying to fix myself. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Good." He responded immediately. "That's it? Just good?" I thought about what else to say. That I was proud of him, that I forgave him, that I missed him. Instead, I typed, "It's a start. Can we talk sometime? Not about money or the house, just talk?" I looked around the empty room, at the space where my childhood bed used to be, where I'd lain awake so many nights feeling invisible and unimportant. "Maybe," I typed back, "when you're ready to see me as your sister instead of your safety net." "I'm ready now." "No, you're not. But you're getting there." I walked back downstairs and stood in the kitchen. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, making everything look golden and new. Tamara was right about one thing. I had everything I'd thought I wanted. The house, the money, the control. But standing there in the silence, I realized something else. I wasn't the same person who'd sat in the back row at Dad's funeral, accepting scraps and calling it family loyalty. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was Trinity. I had a voice. I had power. I had choices. And for the first time in 30 years, I was exactly where I belonged. I pulled out my phone and called a contractor. "Hi, this is Trinity. I'd like to get an estimate on some renovations. I'm thinking of knocking down some walls, opening up the space, making room for the life I actually want to live." As I described my plans, I walked through each room, seeing not what had been, but what could be. The house felt different already, like it was finally ready to become a home. My home.